Okay, so quick disclaimer, the last video I posted on this channel was a lore video, and I intended for the video right after that to also be a lore video, but as I was working on that video, BFDIA 18 came out, and I want to talk about that. So, for anyone keeping track of the Lech Gang lore, the video you are about to watch is not lore relevant yet, so don't worry. BFDIA 18 was a very interesting episode. It was a very enjoyable episode, but more than most of the other episodes of this season, it gave me a lot to think about. There actually is quite a lot to talk about with this one, but for the sake of this video, I'm only going to be focusing on by far my favorite character in the episode, Coiny. Now, I know that might seem weird, given Needle's self-reflection, Tennis Ball's villain arc, Book's underdog story, Pin's big moment, and Fry's doing Fry's things. You might be confused on why I'm bringing up Coiny specifically. Well, hear me out on this one, okay? I believe that BFDIA, depending on how you interpret it, recontextualizes Coiny's entire character. I am not kidding you. After I sat down to think about the events of this episode, suddenly so many things started to fall into place. The biggest scene of the episode is the moment where Pin leaves Coiny to fall during the last stretch of the challenge. And this happens after a prior scene where Coiny went out of his way to recover her when he easily could have gone for immunity. This scene demonstrates how Coiny has consistently gone out of his way to help Pin when she's in trouble, but she isn't willing to do the same for him. See, prior to this episode, I was always a little iffy about how so much of Coiny's character in BFDIA seemed to be helping Pin through her struggles, while not getting too much on his own, but it was a small complaint. Coiny was, and still is, really funny, so you know what, that was small potatoes. But this episode confirms that this feeling I had wasn't nothing. That big scene confirmed my suspicions and made me come to two realizations about one of BFDI's most dominant duos. First off, Pin is not a good friend. I do sympathize with Pin a lot, primarily because of how bad she had it early on in BFDIA, and I understand her desire to win the challenge, but like, girl, why are you death glaring him like that? This man literally carried you for multiple challenges. You have negative reasons to be treating him like this. And secondly, Coiny might have a savior complex. Now I'm going to preface the rest of this video with a disclaimer. What I'm about to go into is purely speculative headcanon. This is how I'm choosing to interpret elements of BFDIA, and you're free to agree or disagree with me however you like. I'm also not definitively saying that this fictional character has this real-life complex, it's just something I picked up on and... Okay, here, why don't I just show you? See, Coiny has always kind of been an oddball when it comes to BFDI and its cast. Unlike characters such as Pencil, Leafy, Golfball, and David, who are defined by their outward personalities, most of what we learn about Coiny comes from how he interacts with others. His rivalry with Fiery is probably his biggest defining plotline in the series, and really demonstrates how immature and kinda dumb these two are. But where Fiery's childishness seemed to stem from genuine airheadedness, Coiny in BFDI was kind of a bully. There's several instances where he's just kind of mean to people for little to no reason, and when you consider that one of his closest friends in BFDI was Snowball, that puts things into perspective. The jocks weren't necessarily evil in BFDI. Okay, maybe Blocky was a little bit evil, but the rest weren't necessarily evil. But at the very least, Snowball and Blocky are bullies, and we know that Coiny is friends with them. He wasn't really in their clique, but he was close enough to be considered the unofficial fifth member, and he could hang with them just fine. This reinforces the idea to me that BFDI Coiny wasn't really a team player. Pretty much everything he did was to make it further in the game, and because he spent so much time slapping Fiery, he wasn't able to connect with as many people as he could've. And as he's about to be eliminated, Tennis Ball calls him out on this.
Leafy, Icy, Blocky. Please, let me stay. Don't think of me as just a fiery slapper. Think about me as someone who wants a second chance at winning Dream Island.
That is the worst speech I've ever...
But if he stays on your team, he won't do you any good. He'll just slap Fiery all day long.
That's a good point. Wait. No!
I love this scene, by the way, it's so funny. So why bring up all these backstory details? Well, I think it's important to keep in mind how Coiny started and then compare that to the character he'd evolve into in BFDIA. Speaking of, let's talk about BFDIA pre-cancellation. After Donut gets a little too butthurt about team configurations, this was before he was cool, he's left entirely by himself. But who should be the first person to join him? If you guessed anyone other than Coiny, then, huh? Now you could argue that he only did this to avoid being on the same team with Fiery, and I do think that's definitely part of it. But I also think that Coiny saw how the teams were shaking out and decided to switch so that Donut wouldn't be on a team alone. This by itself isn't indicative of any complexes, but what it does tell us is that unlike Season 1, Coiny is trying to be a team player. He tries to come up with a team name in episode 2, which I honestly think he did in part to cheer up his teammates, Donut especially. And while he did threaten Needle to join the team, showing that he's still a little mischievous, in the following episodes he's fully committed himself to his new team, acting as its de facto leader. And if that was all there was to Coiny, then this would be a simple story of a coin overcoming his arrogance in order to help others. But fortunately, we still have the rest of BFDIA to go through. One thing that I can confidently say about Coiny is that he cares a lot about his friends. Look at this scene in Teapot 1, he is so excited to bring Wobunch back together, it's so wholesome. But Wobunch really wasn't long for this world. Rocky, Yellowface, and Spongy got picked off relatively quickly, Needle clearly likes Free Smart better, and Nickel was never super popular on that team to begin with. So as far as friends go, the only person who's been with Coiny the entire time has been Pin. And Pin's a handful. Okay, Bami was there a little bit too. Pin's experience competing on BFDIA has been rough to say the least. Losing your limbs, face, and size, all while being hated by most of your fellow contestants is very frustrating. And Pin is not shy about venting her feelings. She definitely needed some emotional support. Support that Coiny was more than happy to provide in spades. Not only was he always on Pin's side, but whenever Pin was in trouble or needed help in any way, Coiny would sometimes drop whatever he was doing in order to go help her. This is one of the reasons why I cannot get behind the idea that Fiery and Coiny are too similar. I love Fiery, don't get me wrong, but when it comes down to who's the better friend, it's no contest. Fiery abandoned Leafy because of peer pressure, whereas Coiny literally went through hell in order to save Pin. And he does all these things episode after episode, all the while Pin is focused on sabotaging Free Smart and not much else. All of that starts to stack up, because as much as Coiny values Pin as a friend, she's also responsible for most of his frustration in BFDIA. And I know this because up until episode 18, the episode where Coiny was at his happiest and most carefree was episode 15, the episode where he wasn't teamed up with Pin. He spends most of this episode with Fries messing around and sabotaging the other teams, and he's clearly having a blast. Just look at him, he's so joyful. I think the reason why he's so carefree is because he doesn't feel obligated to solve Pin's problems. Instead, he just gets to have fun playing the game. Episode 18 does a good job of reaffirming Coiny's motives. He wants to win Dream Island, but he also wants to have fun. He wants to compete with his friends, win challenges, and just have a good time. And in episode 18, he's doing that. He kills it in the challenge, and with some exceptions, he seems to be having an amazing time competing for himself. But then, Pin dies, and because no one else seems keen on recovering her, Coiny, like always, takes it upon himself to bring her back, even if it costs him an easy immunity win. And this, I feel, is emblematic of something bigger. All of this together isn't just Coiny being selfless for the sake of his friend. It's a pattern that thoroughly demonstrates how he's changed since BFDI, for better and for worse. I mentioned the idea of a savior complex earlier, and that term may also be in the title of this video, I don't know yet, so let's go over what that is. A savior complex is defined as an attitude or demeanor in which a person believes they are responsible for assisting other people. A person with a savior complex will often experience empathetic episodes and commit to impulsive decisions such as volunteering, donating, or advocating for a cause. Based on what we've just discussed, I think this definition does, at least in part, apply to Coiny. He's made a lot of impulsive decisions just for the sake of helping others out, such as switching to Donut's team, leaving several challenges to help Pin, and a lot of these things put him in a way worse position than when he started. But as BFDIA 15 showed, one challenge is all it really takes for Coiny to warm up to people. And if we took those things on their own, you could argue that he's just a selfless guy and leave it at that. But there's one other side to this coin worth discussing. Get it side? Yet another side to him. He's a coin. Coins have sides. Okay, I'll stop. And we get to see this extra side of him when he interacts with Needle in BFDIA 18.
Hey, Needle! Can you bring the elevator back down? It's the only way up the tower!
Oh, right. Okay. All yours.
Thanks, Needle. Glad you're still looking out for the bunch.
Huh?
You know, because I'm about to win once I get to my third beacon, but as long as one of us wins, it's like the whole bunch wins, and I'm sure everyone will love this act of sacrifice.
Act of sacrifice?
Coiny and Needle's friendship is a bit underrated in my opinion. Unlike Pin, where he's constantly trying to help her, walking around eggshells the entire time, Coiny is clearly more comfortable being himself around Needle. Now he can, and has been somewhat mean to her, but he does that because they're homies. You know how in your friend group you have that one friend who you know you can make fun of because they give off funny reactions, but they're still a good sport about it? Yeah, that's Needle and Coiny. Needle is incredibly competent, but her whole struggle has been about seeking the approval of others, and you've seen the episode, you know where this is going. Let me just build up to it on Coiny's end. Something about how Coiny says, "I'm sure everyone will love this act of sacrifice," really gets me thinking. The way this scene is portrayed, Coiny is acting a lot more brash, much like his BFDI counterpart. But he's not thinking for himself, he's thinking about the bunch. A team that he still considers Needle to be a part of, the team he still considers himself to be the leader of, and the team with all his teammates that he needs to help. But that's not what Needle needs.
I'm done with that nonsense.
What?
I think it's time I win for myself.
A person with the complex will usually make an attempt to assist or continue to assist even if they are not helpful or are detrimental to the situation, others, or themselves. Coiny assumes that he knows what's best for Needle and acts without really consulting her. In his mind, he's the leader of Wobunch, and he knows exactly what to do in order to save the day. And I personally hope that this exchange, in tandem with Pin's betrayal, will allow Coiny to reflect on who he is and what he's been doing. Because out of everyone left in BFDIA, the one person who really needs someone to come in and help them is Coiny. Coiny started BFDI as a very angry, immature person, whose hatred towards Fiery and unwillingness to cooperate ended up being his downfall. But, over the course of BFDIA, he was always trying to better himself. His main motivation for doing this was probably to appeal to the other contestants and the viewers, so he could get further in the game. But sometime after BFDIA 4, Coiny's motivation changed. He genuinely grew attached to Wobunch, at least the members that stuck around, and once he made those friendships, he'd do whatever it took to preserve them. That led to him becoming Pin's confidant, the guy who helped her out when she was limbless, faceless, and helpless. And what started out as one teammate looking out for the other turned into a relationship where Coiny is always trying to help Pin with whatever problem she's facing, and Pin almost completely takes it for granted. Whenever his friends need help, Coiny is always there. But in this instance where Coiny really needed help, no one had his back. Coiny needs a break. A break and a hug, because all he wants is to be a silly guy, but his best friend has depression, and he just wants to make her feel better, damn it. Despite his mischievous streak and sometimes brazen personality, he is underratedly wholesome, and I hope this video has convinced you of that. You can probably tell that I want him to be safe, but I'm not going to leverage that to tell you who to vote for. I think this is the perfect episode for Needle to get out, since her arc pretty thoroughly wrapped up this episode, but judging by the dislike, she's probably not going to, so, dang. No, the main reason I made this video is because I want everyone to know just how amazing Coiny really is, because I feel like when it comes to BFDIA discussion, he tends to get lost in the shuffle. And I know this because I got to see it firsthand on my community tab. I wasn't initially going to bring up this post in the video, but upon seeing the comments, it became clear that I had to. When I asked you all to guess on who you thought I'd be reviewing, Pin was the runaway favorite, with by far the most comments and the most guesses in this community post. As for Coiny, not only did he have the least amount of support, but there were several comments that dismissed the idea that he'd get the analysis entirely, because they didn't think that there'd be enough to talk about. And I don't blame those people for thinking that way, not at all. But I do think it's unfortunate that Pin has always outshone Coiny in the eyes of the fans, and he's often relegated to being just her sidekick. Think about this. When it comes to Pin's betrayal of Coiny, everyone was focused on Pin, how she's a heartless traitor and a bully and should be eliminated, but no one was talking about Coiny and how he must have felt after that betrayal. I did initially want to talk about Pin for a little bit in this video, not for too long, just as an interlude, but I decided against it because I knew if I did, then the comment section would just be filled with people talking about her, and Coiny would be a footnote in a discussion that I want to center around him. Because I firmly believe that Coiny is a great character, who warrants discussion on the same level as the rest of the cast, and who deserves to win the season just as much as they do. He's come so far from his fiery slapping days, evolving into a charismatic, mischievous, kind-hearted character, with his own struggles, desires, and motivations carrying him forward. And I hope this video has convinced you of that. For my 1 cent, I want him to outplace Pin, just so he can have that one episode where he gets to be the center of an emotional plot beat, and his struggles are put to the forefront. I feel like he's earned that. But this final 6 is so good, I'll probably enjoy the last few episodes regardless of who makes it there. If this video made you appreciate Coiny even just a little bit more, then this video has succeeded. And if this video made you appreciate me a little more, then consider liking the video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. Do that and I'll be sure to make more content just like this. For now though, this video has come to an end, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
I can't believe I didn't get a part in the video. I guess the world isn't ready for my BFDI opinions, and no one will ever know my favorite BFDI character, the totally awesome character known as